Excellent. Okay, I gotta be faster because some speaker before me was taking far too long, but that's okay. I'm going to talk about AI and UX. I've been a web developer for 25 years. I worked on the Firefox browser. I worked on the Edge browser. I worked on the developer tools for Chromium the last 5 years. And then I left Microsoft, and now I was the director of DevRel at We Are Developers, and now I'm the VP of DevRel at We Are Developers for in 2 months. I don't know why, but it's good. So we have a problem right now that AI is everywhere, and it's actually being used in a very weird fashion. Everything I'm going to talk about is behind this QR code. So if you want to go to that, you can also go to gist.github.com, codepoet 7AFA09CC9FA110. No, just use the QR code. Hey, do you want to have a chat? Everywhere, all the time, and as your main interaction with computers? Because that's what's happening right now. ChatGPT was this huge success. It's basically the fastest growing consumer app until Threads came around, and then Threads lost all its users, and now it's still Chat. I don't know which one is the biggest one right now, but it was a huge success. And it was actually kind of a perfect storm, because what ChatGPT did was not only give us AI and give us like LLMs in an understandable fashion, but web search gave up on providing real free results. If you did a web search like years ago, you found results. Now you found 4 pages of ads and then maybe the thing you were looking for. And it's just absolutely atrocious what we have. And ChatGPT gave you information because you asked it like, okay, I want to cook some chicken. What's a recipe? And it gave you the recipe and not 12 pop-ups, 5 cookie notifications, and all these things that we're annoyed about the web. The interface appeared mock human and very sci-fi. It's pretty cool to talk to a computer, and a computer talks back like a human does. It's very like Star Trek, when you basically like, computer, do this, and the computer does that. And the results sounded incredibly useful. They sound useful, they might not actually be useful, because ChatGPT is a Californian product, and Californians don't say no. They say a very complex yes, that might not make sense, but it sounds very clever. I always call ChatGPT mansplaining as a service, because it actually tells you things that you already know in a fashion that sounds very clever. And people go further with that, like AI and voice recognition will make computing available to everybody, regardless of ability. And I've been an accessibility advocate for a long, long time. And it's quite interesting that when you do some analysis on the interfaces that we have right now, like ChatGPT, Bard, and all the other copies, basically they're really bad with screen readers. So people who can't see can't use them. People who are confused by animation on the screen don't like that it's actually writing it on the screen. We actually get confused by that. So there's no way to turn that off. If in your operating system you say you don't want animations, ChatGPT still writes the things there. And that confuses me when it starts telling me bullshit and it keeps writing it. And you're like, just stop. Like it's like some person telling you something that doesn't make sense and you can't interrupt them. Not a bad idea, like I am right now. So AI is here to stay. The question is like, how is it here to stay? Because it's so powerful and so expensive. Is it a lock-in addiction machine? Are we going to use ChatGPT for everything? Is this going to be our first interaction with computers? Is it a distracting helper? Like, you want to do this? I can tell you something else. An automator of the obvious. I would love that. Like any app that I use, if I do the same steps 5 times, it should say like, hey, you've done that 5 times. Do you want a button that does it 5 times for you? That'd be great, wouldn't it? Like if the interface is changed to our needs. Should it be an enhancement of existing use cases, things we already do? Or should it be an eager listener and problem solver? Like, that picture that you uploaded is far too big. Shall I just resize it for you? Wouldn't that be lovely if we did these things? We are developers here. You can do this. You can make this happen. You don't have to wait for the large corporations in America to come up with something amazing. The problem right now is that it's more noise than helper what we do with AI. And this is like ChatGPT, this is what it looks like, and everybody's like, okay, we're going to do something completely different and make it look like this. So that's Google Bard, which is actually the same interface, and does the same things. Is this really the best way we can actually interact with an LLM? Is this actually the best way we want to use AI? Microsoft did it even better. It integrated it into the browser as a sidebar. And even better, when you actually just randomly do things on your trackpad, it actually starts giving you this if you want it or not. So it gives you like, okay, here's now the chat interface. You probably didn't want to do a search. No, actually, I wanted to do a search, and I want to do a search why ChatGPT is not working on a screen reader. And it tells me it might be my internet connection. It actually starts doing ChatGPT up there as well without me wanting to. Then I get something on the side, and then I get probably some background noise and some video playing. Please, please love us. We're using AI. Like, don't overload your users. This is absolutely horrid. And reminds me of one thing from long, long ago. And Clippy was not a bad idea. People were not computer literate back then. They actually didn't know what the machine can do for them. So it actually was an interesting concept to explain to them what it does. But it only offered you nonsense. That's why it actually wasn't that good. It became an interesting concept and became a joke. And it's kind of UX bankruptcy. When you build something and it's so hard to use that you need a helper to actually explain people what to do, maybe design this thing newly, maybe make it easier. That would be another way to do that. And it's annoyance rather than a helper. But now we got ClipA, which is using OpenAI. And I think the most important thing is when you now think about your products and you put AI in it, people don't buy products, they buy solutions to their problems. And people use systems differently for different use cases, and they're really going for it. So let's avoid the obvious traps and the old traps when we build something here. So AI-powered chat systems, what is the things that I think are annoying about them and we should be thinking about before you build the next chatbot for your company? They do take a lot of time. We don't realize it, but we chat with a computer for 10 minutes to get a recipe for chicken instead of just getting a website. Once we clicked away all the cookie consent things, you can read that at that thing immediately. It doesn't feel like that because the faux typing is fun at first. Like the computer answers me when I ask things. This is pretty cool. But then when you don't get the answer and you're 10 minutes in and it keeps typing random things, it's not as exciting any longer. And people will get bored of this. Discarded interaction doesn't mean positive experience. That's what a lot of these systems do. If you actually write something and you're basically at the end of it and you're like, okay, cool, done, then that gets voted up higher and say like, that was obviously the right answer to that question. But it might not be. It might have just been that that thing annoyed me so much that I don't want to talk to it anymore. It's a bit like when you argue with your partner and the person says, and you say like, is everything okay? And she or he says like, yeah, everything is okay. And you're like, that's not the end of the conversation. There might be another question that might give some extra information there. And it's not demanding context. It tries to be that helpful Californian person that, hi, happy to help you. Like, not like what context do you want the answer in? It just gives you the internet as the context. It feels like pressing, do you feel lucky on Google all the time? Because the first result is one that you get. And most of the time you don't feel lucky, especially not nowadays in Google and Bing and other search engines. So an interesting thing about it would be tightening the context. This is GitHub Copilot for Docs, and it actually gives you official documentation like for TypeScript, for Visual Studio Code, and for React as a chat interface. What is even more interesting is that it allows you to filter the responses. So you can say like, I know this material well, I'm an advanced developer, a beginner developer, and I want a balanced response. I want just the facts, or I want to learn this. Please tell me a lot of stuff or not many things. And this is great. These are all prompts that you can actually do if you write prompt engineering things, but it should be an interface for every user out there. The results then come in as a ChatGPT style interface as well, but it actually gives you the context. So you see where it comes from. So you see the using fetch here, and there you can highlight where in the official API documentation it came from. So it wasn't just some random thing somebody wrote on Stack Overflow years ago, but it came directly from the documentation. And reading documentation isn't fun, but this is an easier way to navigate it. So if your documentation is on GitHub Pages or GitHub whatever, you can actually get that indexed by GitHub Copilot, I think. Now, developer tools is something I worked on for years and years, and I'm very passionate about them. So what do developer tools built with AI do wrong? They don't integrate with existing tools and tool chains. People go to ChatGPT, find some JavaScript, copy and paste it back into the editor, and then realize, as we heard earlier, the linter tells you this is actually garbage. This is not really JavaScript. This is not really TypeScript. It just basically doesn't integrate with them. It just wants you to go somewhere else to do code. Malware creators actually teach ChatGPT NPM packages that don't exist. So ChatGPT offers other people those NPM packages, and they uploaded malware to actually infect people's computers. This is already happening. It's insane. Generating code versus aiding development, like here's lots of code, please copy and paste it and love it and trust us, it's safe, it's totally fine. And offering outdated, invalid, insecure, and unoptimized results. Most free GPT, or not ChatGPT, free LLMs are actually 2 to 3 years old. So they actually give you probably advice for APIs that are outdated or don't even exist any longer. I had that the other day when I tried to do something with Playwright. It gave me the old API, and I basically couldn't teach the machine that, like, here's the documentation, I wrote it, can you do something and index that instead? It just gave me outdated code. So what works? This is Copilot now in Visual Studio Code. Everybody probably saw that function via name completion. So you write a function called share link, and it offers you the function that you can have, and then you can read it and say, like, that's the function that I want, that's great. Even better is tab completion. So when you start your function and then tab by tab, line by line, you actually get the information and you see, like, okay, let F, oh, okay, I want the form, okay, I want a button, I want the post, and so on and so forth. You can actually, line by line, you can understand what's going on there. There's only inline creation via prompt. Not many people know that with Copilot Chat. If you do command \, you can actually say inline in your code, say, like, create a function that does something, or whatever I called it, create a share to Twitter function. And if I knew how to write, that would be much faster as well. And then it actually creates the function for me. And it shows me the div view. It doesn't just create the code in there, but it actually shows me a div view. I can edit the div that it generated for me and then add it to my code. That's an extra safety step that I really, really love, because it makes sure that I don't write code that is bad there. You can also comment things. So basically you can highlight a bit of code and say, like, okay, write the comments for me. Might be good for junior developers, other people that want to read your code for the first time, just to have some comments in there. And they're actually quite clever. They're not the, like, let x equals 1. That means x is 1 now. But basically it skips those and writes comments that are actually quite useful. Again, you get the div view to see the changes. You can also create the JS doc comments. So if you don't want to use TypeScript, but you want to use JavaScript and have types, you cannot write that crap by hand, but you can actually let the computer do it for you just by highlighting it, do an inline thing and say, like, JS doc, please, and you get all the comments in there. And you can explain it. And this is where it goes into a sidebar. So you basically highlight some code and you say, like, explain me what I wrote yesterday when I was drunk. And I want to understand what I've been writing. And then basically it explains in simple terms what's there. It always cracks me up when these systems say, we have 118 languages, which means you checked 3 and the others you hoped nobody is actually offended by the answer, because nobody checks the 118. In English, those things work. In German, they work-ish. In Polish, no. Code referencing is another bit that was very important. So if you write some code and you get some code, it tells you, like, that is actually from that package with that license. So can you use it in your product? Is it legal or not to use it? So that's something that works. I haven't seen it working on my machine yet because I haven't written any code that everybody else used yet. So it must be a weird code. I don't know. I love that it also helps you with code workflow, because having good pull request descriptions and stuff is a task to do, but you can automate that as well. So you can say, Copilot, give me a summary. Copilot, it's actually the issue that was fixed. And then Copilot, give me a walkthrough. And then Copilot poem, because developers are bored. And actually what it does for you then is go for it, analyze the code changes that you've done, and actually write a summary about the changes that happened, and then a step-by-step process for other people to try it out before they can actually get your pull request into the thing. And that's just wonderful, because that's something that we never write. We always say, like, we write, but we never do. Terminal integration, so you can go to a terminal and say, like, question mark, how about I want to convert all these videos in this folder to MP4 and resize them to 640 pixels, and then it generates a bash script for me, explains what the bash script does, and allows me to run this command immediately or cancel it. This is in-context help of AI. This is amazing, rather than going to ChatGPT and then copying and pasting it back, and you can even test it. I would love to have a test run rather than executing it immediately. Like there's a program called Shit, I think, or something you shouldn't say in public, but it basically allows you to run Unix commands before executing them. They wrote all of that down. That was the really annoying thing. I did all that research myself, and then a day later, GitHub wrote that blog about where they explained how they did all these things. I'm like, you should have told me that, so I don't have to do it myself. Authoring tools, writing. Go back from coding to writing. I love writing. I actually started writing the description of my code before I write the code, and that's actually a super clever thing, because you realize that is not necessary. Whereas the code like, oh, I can do that too. You know, it's not a bad idea. But authoring tools have the same issue. I get a lot of companies sending me their authoring tools and say like, hey, you're a blogger, you're a writer, you wrote a few books. We have an AI writing tool. And then like it doesn't do copy and paste, or it's like a really bad editor and you can't resize the font. It doesn't do the basic things right that a writing tool should do. So it should be a great word processor to start with. And it should not disrupt the writing process, but aid it. So instead of telling me like, oh, you want to write this and you want to write that, like Clippy used to do, I just want to have something that does it when I want it to. And they also generate a ton of text without style matching. So they make me sound like a Californian on cocaine in 1983, rather than just my writing style that I wrote before and say like, hey, here's 500 pages. Can you help me write more? And please in my language. That might be a good thing too. And they repeat content. I mean, you probably saw that when you use ChatGPT to write something, it says like, okay, that's great. And then like 5 paragraphs later, that's great again. And like the same thing over and over again. You're like, just say you don't know anything anymore. I'm not going to be angry at that. Just don't offer me the same things over and over again. We use 3 bullet points right now and then ask ChatGPT to write an email. Oh, an email that people want, like the email that finds you well. You know, everybody gets those and nobody wants them. And then basically we use Outlook to actually turn these 3 bullet points, this email back into 3 bullet points. So we use AI twice and burn a lot of energy and realize like this communication wasn't necessary. I love Hemingway. I've been using that for a long, long time. Hemingway editor, it's free, it's online, and it shows you how complex your language is. So it shows you actually the readability, how well people need to be versed in English to understand what you've been writing. And it actually shows you when a text is too long, or when a text is actually hard to read, and when you have phrases that have simpler alternatives. And it actually just highlights that in the background, you change it along, and it's just, you had to do that by hand in the old version. There's now a beta of that actually does this for you. So you can now take these red sentences and click on them and say like, okay, give me a simpler version. And a simpler version then gets written for you, so you can read along while it actually does it, and it shows you the reading grade that's necessary to understand that sentence. So that actually allows you to go through the complex sentences that you had and actually do bit by bit. I wanted to go back. Okay. And do bit by bit what's actually being there. This doesn't work. Anyways, it can also generate text for you. Let's try that again. No. Okay. So you highlight it and it does the rewriting for you rather than doing it by hand. You can also do a slash and say like, keep writing what I've been writing, and then it actually gives you the rest of the sentences and you can read along as well. Ironically, it writes it in a fashion that is not easy to read, so you have to rewrite that there, but they're gonna fix that soon. But this is an emerging convention. Like you have like these slash commands. So in this case, you say like press slash, continue writing, or in GitHub Copilot, you can do /explain, /help, /fix, and so on and so forth. And this is something that a lot of chat systems do, but the problem with those kind of clever things is that, are they findable? Every tool that I worked on has a command palette in it, Command-Shift-P, or Command-K in some of them. GitHub has that, Command-K, and you can actually select from commands with your keyboard. You don't need to use your mouse at all, which I don't like doing. But most people don't know about these. Like, for example, you can control the whole DevTools and you can control the whole of VS Code just with your keyboard. And that's a very important accessibility feature, Command-Shift-P. You probably don't know what VS Code can do unless you use that thing. Video tools. Like a lot of video tools generate videos without editing options. Like, oh, cool, I want a baby beaver balancing on a board and to the Star Wars music. Great, here's your video. Please share it on the internet because you're now a creator. No. Also, the video is not editable. You can't do anything with it. They're offering the same as filters in chat systems to a degree. Like a lot of these videos look like it's a bad like Snapchat filter. And they create packaged content without tracks. So instead of generating videos, what I like to use AI with is actually convert videos to other formats. And there's a system called VideoTap that's by people that I know in Las Vegas. And actually what allows you to do is you upload a video and then it creates a transcript. Not a big thing. YouTube does that as well. Descript did that for quite a while as well. But it then takes that transcript and actually does subtitles out of it, like timed subtitles as well, that you can edit in there as well. And social media tidbits. So it actually finds bits in the video that might be interesting as a tweet. So you don't actually have to write that stuff. You get it from the video. You also get a meta summary for your pages. You get YouTube meta content like the chapters and also the description that you want to do there, and tags that most of the time are rubbish. But the chapters are actually really, really well done as well. And you can get a blog post from the video. So it takes that transcript, runs it through an LLM, I think it's Llama on the background, and actually gives you a proper blog post with headings, with like pull quotes. If I wrote some code in there, it actually in the video, if I have code in the video, it becomes a editable code block. I can select a screenshot from the video to insert anywhere in the blog post, and I can actually, when I talk about a URL, it becomes a link. So of course, this is not perfect, but it's actually 90% of the way that you can actually write a blog post from a video. And it has clips for promotion, so it detects things in your video where you can say like, okay, I just want to have a part of that video, tweetable, like TikTokable, whatever. And it actually can edit that by saying create a clip. You create a clip by highlighting part of the transcript, and then it actually generates the video where you set that thing for you as a little video that it can download, or you can convert to Instagram, you can convert to TikTok, you can convert to whatever is the next feature next tomorrow. And you can also then define the colors and how many words you want to show. And it's actually a very easy way to reuse video into smaller formats. Now, the last thing I think I have is graphical tools. And there's the problem again that they generate destructively. You're basically like, you go to MindJourney or you go to any of the others and you have one image. Excellent, cool. Share the image, be successful, be a creator. They also have full page thinking versus component thinking. You always had the demo like, build me a sign-up page for a puppy walking website, and then it shows you the website. It's, oh, it's using React and Vue and all the other frameworks under the hood. Web developers are not necessary anymore. You know what, for those pages, please don't hire a web developer to do that crap that you want to throw away a month later anyways. Like, I'm happy if they get generated by computers. But the whole idea of full page thinking versus component thinking is very outdated. There's an open dream system, it's on GitHub, that allows you to actually use generated images, but it generates editable layers, and you can save it as a PSD or you can save it as a format that you want. Another company I work with is called Locify, and what they do, they actually turn Figma designs or any other designs that you have, like you can use Figma, you can use XD, you can use Storyblock, and you turn that design into components that are actually React components, Gatsby components, Next.js, HTML components, and so on and so forth. So instead of getting a design from our designers and then starting our components in React, we can actually start with those and get components generated. Then we can edit them and actually do something with them. It also does analysis on the graphic. So instead of saying like, okay, here's like 6,000 divs, it actually says like, that's a button, right? Shall we make a button control that's a proper button? That looks like a drop-down to me. Shall we make a drop-down control and actually do that? And you can start publishing that to the web immediately from your designs. And I love that because designers have become so good in componentizing things over the last few years. We don't get a PSD anymore that's like layer 1 to layer 37, and that's called like final version 23 now, really. It's basically people are componentizing their designs much like we componentize our code these days. So if you want to include AI in your product, try to stand out with good UX and local relevance. Make sure that you build something that is not ChatGPT because that's been built, but build something that is basically interesting for your market. How about the Dutch market? Like, it's too small for the American companies to care, but it's an interesting thing for you to make an income. This can be a revolution, that AI thing, or it can actually be another hype with lots of wasted money and energy and many a forgotten startup that disrupted too hard and basically gets forgotten. I don't want AI to be a flash in the pan like Web3, crypto, Flash, or all the other things were. I want this to basically be an invisible, better version of the web that we have right now and of software that we have right now. And that's all I had, so thanks very much.